wait for you to tell me when you see me because I think that it's already started. So, hello everyone. Welcome to Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet. It took me a little while to figure out my stream. I'm still not even sure what just happened there, but just like last time, right? It's a work in progress. I'm trying to learn how to use all the software that YouTube has to offer. So, today we're actually talking about intuitive eating. And so, sorry, I'm a little frazzled. Today we're talking about intuitive eating. I'll let you know a little bit about who I am. My name is Violet Rivera. I'm a psychologist. I make these videos because I want everyone to understand that your mental health and your physical health come together to create your overall sense of well-being. Today, I'm going to start with talking about how I ended up in this situation, sitting in front of you, making videos, and help you to understand the idea of intuitive eating along the way. So just for those of you who might not know who I am, I'm a psychologist, and I'm the kind of person that I like to be active. I like to do things because I don't like working out. I mean, I'm just gonna be very honest. I don't like working out, so I'd rather ski, I'd rather longboard, I'd rather bike ride or rollerblade or all the fun things, take my kids to the trampoline place, and I'd rather do that than to go to the gym and work out with weights. So because of that, I've always been the person to find activities that I love and to engage them. So with that being said, um, wow, I guess it's been about 2 years now since I had a bit of an issue. I had a hip issue that started to happen, and it was actually putting me in a position where I could barely sit in my office with crossed legs. Walking up and down stairs was, I would say, excruciating, and I was unable to do the sports that I like to do. So right away, I will say that the thing that hit me the hardest was not being able to do the sports that I like to do. It took me a few weeks before I really started to push hard to figure out what was going on because I really thought, maybe I slept poorly or something and my hip would feel better eventually. Now, I'm going to be very clear. I'm the kind of person that if I have an injury, so if I fall from a sport or whatever, I'm totally sure that I'll heal. And so I wasn't super worried because I just felt like I'm going to feel better. A few months later, when I didn't feel better, I decided to look into losing some weight because my first thought was, well, maybe, I was a bit overweight at the time. And I thought if I just lose some weight, I'm going to feel better. My hip's going to be better. I did all the normal things that I always tell people to do when they're trying to lose weight because I do have people in my office talking about weight issues. And, it's the typical, you know, eat a better diet, move more, try to make sure that you're in a caloric deficit. So I did that. Um, and what ended up happening was that walking, and because at that point in time, walking was about the only thing I could manage, but I was walking some serious distances every day. And the walking helped my hip to feel better in the sense that moving was helping, but it still didn't heal my hip. And of course, I didn't end up losing any weight, even though I was only eating really healthy foods. I cut all the fats out. I was doing all the basic things that people are told to do. Fast forward, I decided to get online and try to figure out what causes hip issues. And I came across the idea that very likely I had inflammation in the hip, and that made sense to me. And then I found some information that told me that inflammation and issues with hips tend to be related to carbohydrates, which shocked me. I think I learned that information in February, and February, March, April. Yeah, it was about 2 months of research and more research and more research because I didn't believe that it could be carbohydrates that was causing the problem. So in April, took carbohydrates out of my life by doing a ketogenic lifestyle. And by a month and a half later, my hip issue was gone. And that began my journey forward. And that's what puts me in the position that I'm in today, that I'm sitting in front of you talking about this. So that's my story. I think the reason I'm telling that story is because there might be people who are finding me on this live who don't know who I am, and they don't understand why psychologists might be talking about weight loss and talking about eating healthy and talking about food. But I want people to understand that During that period of time where I couldn't, so I crossed the whole season without snowboarding. And that was really, actually, that's not true. I did snowboard that year twice, I think, or three times, but it wasn't a good idea. And that was really tough for me. And my mood was bad. Just the pain that I was in, my mood was bad. So not being able to do the things you love to do, not being able to be active the way you love to be active does affect your mental health. And so part of the reason that I decided to make this channel and talk about this is that I do really want people to understand that being physically healthy also contributes to you doing well in life psychologically. I have a few things I'm going to go through to help. Well, I have notes for myself, but I have a few things I want to go through talking about keto and intuitive eating. So, first of all, I want to talk about what intuitive eating is, because the idea of intuition is a thing that we know or consider likely from an instinctive feeling rather than conscious reasoning. So that basically means that because I feel it's right and understand it to be right, I do it rather than consciously saying, oh, this is better than that. And so the idea that we can eat intuitively is something that I found intriguing. First of all, because I feel like 90% of the world does eat intuitively in the sense that on the standard American diet, we eat whatever we feel like eating. And then it affects our weight the way it does. And most people aren't on the standard American diet um, calculating what they're eating. So the first part of this is that that idea that I'm going to be able to intuitively eat on a ketogenic lifestyle and maintain my healthy weight. So I feel like if that's what I'm trying to do, to intuitively eat to maintain my healthy weight, there's a difference between that and intuitively eat to lose weight. Because I actually believe that those two things are very different. And my reasoning for that is this. First of all, the majority of people who are doing a ketogenic lifestyle to lose weight are actually new to the lifestyle. Because once you start to do something that's super healthy for yourself, most people hold on to those things, right? Like for those of us who are really active like I am, I held on to that throughout my adulthood because I saw how much better I feel when I'm active compared to when I was only focused on work and not getting any physical exercise. I didn't feel well. So for most people, when you find something that's helping you to feel good, we keep it in our life. That's why I believe that most people who are intuitively eating are actually past the point where they're trying to lose weight. Usually that would be the point where you have lost weight. Now, why am I bringing that up? We want to do what's easy. And unfortunately, eating the standard American diet, the standard Canadian diet, is easy, right? You eat whatever you feel like eating, and then your hormones are out of whack, your carbohydrates are way too high, and most of us end up gaining weight at about a rate of a half a pound to a pound per year. Which, although it doesn't sound like a lot of weight, that means that by the time that you're 10 years later, you've gained at least 10 pounds. Now, and that's if I'm able to eat at a moderate level. If I'm the kind of person who eats emotionally, if I'm the kind of person who has issues with food and maybe just overeats, then I'm gaining more than a half a pound to a pound per year. I could be 10 years later and be 30 pounds, 40 pounds overweight. So eating intuitively in our culture with the type of foods that we're eating has actually caused us issues. So that's one of the things that I want to make sure that I'm very obvious about is that I do believe that intuitive eating is possible. I also believe that it's possible once you understand your body better. Okay, so um, comparing that to tracking, because those are the two basic ways, right? We are either eating intuitively or we're tracking. And I believe that every single person who is beginning a ketogenic lifestyle or any weight loss, anything, regardless of whether it's keto or not, should actually be tracking. And there's multiple reasons for that. The most important to me, I think, is at the very beginning, I should track. Before I've even started the diet, I should track for a little while to see, well, how much was I eating? It's good to have a baseline so that you can understand where you're starting from. You should track your food for about a week, and then you should also check your weight, take pictures, take measurements, have a way of knowing if I've had success or not. Then, when you actually begin the ketogenic lifestyle, it's important for us to know how many grams of carbs are in what we're eating. Because in a ketogenic lifestyle, you're eating 20 grams of carbs or less. And how will I know if I'm eating 20 grams of carbs or less unless I've been tracking? I need to understand how much broccoli I can eat in a day and still be able to eat a salad and still be able to eat maybe some beans or whatever it is I'm eating. Like, I need to be able to check and know, okay, I didn't go over. One of the things that I found the most surprising when I started the ketogenic lifestyle was learning that one slice of bread has 15 grams of carbs. I didn't know that. So if I didn't know how many grams of carbs are in a slice of bread, and that's written on the package, how was I going to be able to guess how many grams of carbs there are in 200 grams of lettuce, for example? I think it's really difficult for us to estimate how many carbs we're eating. We actually need to check. And okay, the other thing I'm going to point out is we will want someone to say, well, eat this. And you know what? If you were to come to my house and say, Violet, make me a salad and, a steak, and what kind of vegetable can I put on the side? Maybe some collard greens, and I make that plate for you. If you were to go to Fred's house and say, Fred, make me a salad and some collard greens and some steak, guess what? The amount of food he puts on your plate is not going to be the same as the amount of food I put on your plate. It's not going to be the same as the amount of food you would have put on your plate. Because guess what? We all share out food, so serve food differently, right? What I think is a serving and what you think is a serving and what actually is a serving is going, like serving according to the government, is going to be different. So much better for you to weigh what you're eating and then be able to say, okay, every time I make collard greens, I can have about that amount. And then you'll start to know so that later, when you are eating intuitively, you remember, okay, yeah, when I eat collard greens, I can have about this much. When I eat a salad, I can have this much in my bowl. When I'm having tomatoes, this is how much is okay for me, right? Because remember, different vegetables and fruits affect us differently. I'm not good with nightshades. So guess how much nightshades, so tomatoes, potatoes, are good for Violet? Zero. I don't eat them because they affect me poorly. That doesn't mean it's going to be your story. But again, if I wasn't checking and understanding how each of these foods were affecting me, I wouldn't have known that. So I do believe tracking is super important, not just for the weight loss process, but also when we're trying to learn how much um, food I can actually put on my plate, when I'm trying to learn how the different foods affect me. I didn't know carbs were affecting me poorly. I learned that from a hip problem. So if you want to know how food is affecting you, you do also need to be able to see, okay, when I have this food, are there any repercussions for me the next few days? Which, another nice thing about keto, it's a very interesting way that we can understand how food's affecting us, because we can diminish the amount of carbs we're eating, and even if we want to eat one carb at a time to see, how do I feel the next day? Did I have any negative reactions? Something to keep in mind. Okay, so tracking is important because it helps you to understand how many carbs you can actually eat. Sorry, we know how many carbs we can eat. Sorry, that was a mistake. How much of each food will give you the amount of carbs you need for the day. So I'm tracking to know how much broccoli I can have. I'm tracking to know, right, how much of what I can have. Now, the other reason I'm making this live stream is because I wanted to address the idea that people say, and I've seen this in my comments, people say that I'm strict. Um, they say that I'm strict because I'm very like, don't eat fruit. It's bad for you. As we know, I've said this a lot of times, fruit is only, so the fructose in fruit is only metabolized in the liver, which is very dangerous for us. Because especially if you eat a lot of fruit, that means that at some point you're going to have fats deposited in the liver. And then when your liver can't hold anymore, fats will be deposited in the pancreas. And then when your pancreas can't hold that anymore, unfortunately, you could be in a scenario where you become diabetic. So I do encourage people not to eat fruit. Like, I don't eat fruit, right? Again, you're making your own choices. This is just me talking out loud. This is my opinion. But from that, people say I'm really strict. And I want to make a distinction between me being strict and me talking about what I've learned and presenting it to you so that you can make your own decisions, right? Because, and I feel like I'm jumping ahead a little bit because it's that difference between dogma, right? So it's like, this is the reality, and then we don't deviate from that, right? So if we're being very dogmatic, this is the reality, we don't deviate from that, versus teaching, which is based on reality, but we can deviate. And I feel like what I'm trying to help people to understand and why I'm seen as strict, the same way that my goal is never to help people to quickly lose weight, because I don't see value in that. I see value in learning how your body functions, getting to a healthy weight, and being able to stay there for the rest of your foreseeable time on the planet so that you can live a healthy life. If that's what I'm trying to do, then getting there quickly isn't the point. Getting there in a way that I understood how I treated my body differently and got there so that I can keep treating my body properly and stay there is the point. And so if that's what I'm doing, then I'll understand how I got to this point. So, am I being dogmatic? Am I being strict? No, I'm teaching something. And for me, I feel like when you teach, you always teach what's correct. And then it's up for every individual, once they know what's right, to take that information and try to apply it to the best of their abilities, because nobody's perfect. I can tell you 20 grams of carbs or less is a ketogenic lifestyle, and that's the place where the majority of people on the planet are going to be healthy. And then when you're applying it in your life, you might be at 25, you might be at 30, you might be at 50. Does that mean that you're not trying to apply what I taught? No, it just means that you're applying it in a way that's not following as closely to what was being taught as what was taught. The question is, would I teach it in a way that shows that you can have all this variability? And I think that that's a mistake, right? Because, that would be as if a police officer was teaching a class on I don't know, whatever. Let's say you're learning how to drive, and they say to you, when you're crossing the lines, dotted lines, you need to indicate. But they say, but hey, whatever, you don't have to do it all the time. And then you get a ticket for not indicating. The officer's not going to care that the person teaching you said, oh, you can do it whenever, because the law is you have to do it. We always have to take into consideration that there is a way to do something correctly. And we should be striving to do it as correctly as we can. But I'm an individual, and my ability to do something is not going to be the same as your ability to do something. But I still wouldn't advise you to do it halfway. I'm advising you to do it to the best of your ability, the complete and correct way. So, is there a reason, for example, to eat fruit that's healthy and better than eating vegetables? In my opinion, from what I've learned from all the doctors that I've listened to, from all the scientists that I've listened to, the answer to that is no. The amount of fructose you get in fruit compared to the amount of fructose you get in vegetables, it's clear that it's better for you to eat vegetables. Am I going to say you're not doing keto if you eat fruit? Not at all. You're doing keto if you eat fruit, as long as you keep it under 20 grams of carbs per day. So again, what I'm trying to help you to see is, and what I'm trying to explain about myself is, I'm not being dogmatic. I'm just teaching the correct information as I know it today. And if at any time this information changes, of course I will share that with you. My goal ultimately is to teach you what I've learned and teach it the best way that I can. And that means I'm not going to give leeway for something that I have been told there shouldn't be. For example, when you watch that white coat video from Dr. Westman, he's very clear. If it's not on page 4, don't eat it. And on page 4, there aren't fruit, as far as I remember from when I saw that. So again, it's one of those things where you can, as an adult, do what you're going to choose to do. I just want you to be aware of how what you're doing could be affecting you. Now, by doing intuitive eating, so I'm going to go back to intuitive eating because I want to talk about what I've learned. So in the last little while, so I guess from April 2018 until April, May, June, July, August, until September, the end of September, I lost almost 70 pounds. I didn't quite crack 70, but I lost almost 70 pounds. And I was tracking throughout that time. The reason that I stopped losing was because I got to a weight that I thought I was comfortable at. I didn't want to go any lower. Now, after that period of time, I did another year. So I went till April 2019. I continued tracking, but I was tracking for maintenance. So I stayed where I was. And in April of this year, I decided that I wanted to try to see what it would feel like to eat intuitively. So I think it wasn't exactly April, but a little bit after. But basically, it's been about 4 months that I actually allowed myself to stop tracking. And I wanted to see how would not tracking affect what I'm doing, especially considering that I've been really, really good at measuring my food this entire time. So I can look at a plate and know how much carbs are in it. And so what I wanted to see was, would my weight resume rising? And I wanted to know like how good was I at eyeballing how much carbs were on my plate. And so this is what I figured out. So in the last 4 months, I was I my weight did rise. So I went up in approximately 4 pounds. So it was about a pound a month. And so one of the things that I noticed is you're talking about two different ideas. We're talking about, was I able to eat intuitively? And we're talking about another idea called carb creep. And the thing that I noticed was this. My main plate was still spot on. And when I stopped doing the intuitive eating and I checked how much I was putting on my plate, I was still spot on. But I did experience carb creep. And it came in the form of the nuts that I was allowing myself to eat and the cheeses that I was allowing myself to eat. So when I measured, so my cheese and when I measured my nut portions, they were higher. So now the question is, what am I learning from this? Well, the interesting thing that I feel that I've learned from that process of allowing myself to eat intuitively, when it comes to food, which was the thing that I was tracking the most over the period of time, because when I was trying to lose, and then when I was in maintenance, most of the time when I measured my food, I wasn't always having cheese or I wasn't always having nuts. So the thing that I was used to measuring the most is my vegetables and my salads. So I can eyeball how much salad I'm supposed to have. I can eyeball how much vegetables I'm supposed to have. I'm not used to guesstimating how much nuts, how much cheese I'm supposed to have. So what was interesting to me is that as long as I weigh my cheese and weigh my nuts, I would be able to live most of my time intuitively. And so, and that's something that I've been noticing is that in the last little while, I've started tracking again. And like I said, my food is always spot on. I'm usually good. But when I do double check, like if I do decide to have some cheese and I try to take some and then I weigh it, that's where I was making my error. So I've made some adjustments there. So I'm happy with myself for figuring that out. But I also think the thing that I want to point out is that now that I know that weighing your food, so weighing my main meal isn't necessarily where I need to put my attention. It's more about weighing any side dishes, any snacks. I do feel like that helps me because it does help me to understand like approximately how many carbs I have to play with when I'm just looking at if I'm going to have something at the end of a meal. So I can relax a little bit on weighing my meals every day. At this point in time, I haven't gotten back to my baseline weight yet, so I'm going to be tracking for a little while, which I think is something that we did talk about. Like I do weigh myself once a month just to see where I am as a check-in, which I think is something that we all should do. Again, tracking your weight, tracking your food, like these are things that we should be doing to help ourselves to make sure that we are accomplishing the goals that we set out for ourselves and maintaining the gains that we got from those goals that we set. Um, so yeah, so I do track every once in a while. I know that I had mentioned, and I'm still not a big fan of working out. So that's something that I'm looking at trying to incorporate at some point in my life, but it's not something that I've started quite yet. Do I have anything else on the list? And I'm not sure. I'm going to double check if there's any questions. So there aren't any questions at this point in time. So you know what? I'm really happy to have made this video. I want to thank everyone for watching Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet. And oh, if you haven't already, if you like this kind of content, please subscribe. I put a video out, actually put 2 videos out per week. One like this, where I'm talking on my own, and another one that I call Pat Chat, where I talk with Patrick about keto news and keto ideas. I want to thank everyone for watching. I'll talk to you guys in the next video.